You could move in with me." The words left Ethan Cole's mouth before his brain could stop them. A single father doesn't just invite a stranger into his home, especially not at 2 in the morning, in the pouring rain with his daughter asleep upstairs. But Claire Morgan wasn't really a stranger anymore. She was his neighbor. And right now she was homeless, humiliated, her entire life dumped on the wet pavement by a landlord who'd changed the locks without warning. What Ethan meant as a throwaway comment, a joke to ease the tension, became the offer that would unravel everything he'd carefully built. Stay with us until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The rain didn't care about timing. It fell hard and relentless against the roof of Ethan Cole's garage, drumming a rhythm that matched the exhaustion in his bones. He stood in the open doorway, one hand wrapped around a coffee mug that had gone cold an hour ago. The other braced against the frame like he needed something solid to hold on to. 2:17 in the morning, his daughter, Mia, was asleep upstairs. 7 years old, her nightlight still on, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. That was his world now. Predictable bedtimes, cartoon cereal in the morning, parent-teacher conferences he attended alone. 3 years since his wife died, and he'd built a life that worked, quiet, ordered, safe. He should have been in bed himself, but sleep didn't come easy anymore, and the garage had become his refuge. Out here, surrounded by half-finished woodworking projects and the smell of sawdust, he could breathe. Out here, he didn't have to be perfect, didn't have to smile through the loneliness or pretend the weight wasn't crushing. Tonight, though, something felt wrong. He couldn't name it, just a tightness in his chest that made him step outside into the rain, still holding that useless cup of coffee. That's when he saw her. Claire Morgan, his neighbor from across the driveway. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair that always looked intentional, even when it wasn't. She lived in the small rental unit attached to the house next door, the kind of place that barely qualified as an apartment but charged rent like it did. Ethan had seen her in passing, a nod here, a wave there, the kind of neighbor you recognized but didn't really know. Right now, she was dragging cardboard boxes through the rain like her life depended on it. Ethan's first instinct was to look away. Not his business, not his problem. He had enough on his plate without getting tangled in someone else's crisis. But then he saw the way her hands were shaking. The trunk of her sedan was open, already overflowing with trash bags and mismatched belongings. She was trying to shove another box inside, but it wouldn't fit. The angle was wrong. The space was too small. She pushed harder, breath coming fast and visible in the cold air, and Ethan heard something break inside the box, glass maybe, or ceramic. Claire froze. For a long moment, she just stood there in the rain, staring at the trunk like it had personally betrayed her. Her shoulders slumped, her head dropped forward, and Ethan realized what he was looking at. Eviction. He scanned the scene again, this time seeing the details. The front door of her unit, closed, a shiny new deadbolt gleaming under the porch light. The boxes scattered across the driveway, hastily taped, some already disintegrating in the rain. No moving truck, no friends helping. Just Claire, alone, trying to salvage whatever she could before it all turned to mush. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't know her story. Didn't know if she'd missed rent or pissed off the landlord or just gotten unlucky. But the cruelty of it, the dumping her stuff outside in the middle of the night, changing the locks without warning, that was something he recognized. He'd seen enough of the world to know when someone was being kicked while they were down. He should have gone back inside. Should have closed the garage door and told himself it wasn't his responsibility. Instead, he set down his coffee mug and stepped into the rain. "What? Need a hand?" Claire's head snapped up, eyes wide and startled. For a second, she looked ready to bolt, or maybe swing at him. Then recognition flickered across her face. "Ethan," she said, voice flat. Not a question, just acknowledgement. He nodded, hands in his pockets, rain already soaking through his flannel shirt. "Looks like you could use some help." Claire glanced at the mess around her, the boxes, the bags, the trunk that refused to cooperate. Her expression was carefully blank, but Ethan could see the exhaustion underneath, the kind that went deeper than one bad night. "I'm fine," she said. "Yeah, I can see that." She almost smiled. Almost. Then her shoulders sagged again, and she let out a breath that might have been a laugh or a sob. "Landlord changed the locks, left all my stuff outside. I've been out here for 2 hours trying to, I don't even know, fit my entire life into a car that's too small. Ethan looked at the trunk again. She wasn't wrong. It was a losing battle. You have somewhere to go? He asked. Claire hesitated. I'll figure it out. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Ethan ran a hand through his wet hair, rain dripping down his neck. This was a bad idea. He knew it was a bad idea. He had a daughter to think about, a routine, boundaries he'd built for a reason. But Claire was standing in the rain at 2 a.m. with nowhere to go, and he couldn't just walk away, so he said it. You could move in with me. The words came out before he could stop them. Casual, offhand, like he was offering her a cup of coffee, not a place to sleep in a house where his 7-year-old daughter lived. Claire stared at him. Ethan stared back, heart suddenly pounding, already scrambling to backtrack. I mean, just for tonight, or a few days. Whatever you need to figure things out. I've got a guest room. It's not much, but it's dry. Claire's expression didn't change. You don't even know me. I know you're getting screwed over by a landlord who dumped your stuff in the rain. That's enough. Why would you do that? Ethan shrugged, trying to look like this wasn't the most impulsive thing he'd done in years. Because it's the right thing to do, and because I've got the space. For a long moment, Claire didn't say anything, just stood there in the rain, studying his face like she was trying to figure out if this was real or some kind of cruel joke. Then she let out a shaky breath. Okay, she said quietly. Ethan blinked. Okay? Just for tonight. Maybe 2. Until I can find something. Right. Yeah. Of course. They stood there for another beat, rain hammering down around them, and Ethan realized he'd just invited a near stranger to live in his house. What the hell was he thinking? It took them an hour to get everything inside. Ethan's garage became a temporary storage unit, boxes stacked against the walls, trash bags piled in corners, furniture wrapped in soggy blankets. Claire worked in silence, methodical and efficient despite the tremor in her hands. She didn't complain, didn't cry, just kept moving, one box at a time. Like stopping would mean admitting how bad this really was. Ethan worked beside her, hauling the heavier items, rearranging his tools to make space. He didn't ask questions, didn't pry, just helped. By the time they finished, the sky was starting to lighten, gray and miserable, but lighter. Claire stood in the middle of his garage, soaked to the bone, staring at the pile of her life like she couldn't quite believe it had come to this. Thank you, she said finally. Her voice was steady, but there was something fragile underneath. Don't mention it, Ethan replied. I mean it. You didn't have to do this. Yeah, well, couldn't just leave you out there. Claire looked at him then, really looked at him. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, searching, like she was trying to figure out what he wanted in return. Ethan held her gaze. I'm not expecting anything from you, Claire. This isn't... I'm just trying to help. She nodded slowly. Okay. Okay. Ethan gestured toward the door. Come on, let's get you inside before you freeze to death. The house was quiet. Ethan led Claire through the side door, into the mudroom where boots and coats lined the walls. The kitchen beyond was small but clean, dishes in the drying rack, a lunchbox already packed for Mia's school day. Everything in its place. Claire stood in the doorway, dripping onto the tile, and Ethan suddenly saw his home through her eyes. The photos on the fridge, the crayon drawings taped to the wall, the little pink backpack hanging by the door. You have a daughter, Claire said. Yeah, Mia, she's 7. She's here? Asleep upstairs. Ethan grabbed a towel from the laundry basket and handed it to her. Don't worry, she's a heavy sleeper. Claire took the towel but didn't move. Ethan, if this is weird for you, if having me here is a problem, it's not. I just don't want to disrupt her life. Or yours. Ethan leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You won't. This is temporary, right? Just until you find a place. We'll set some ground rules, keep things simple. It'll be fine. Claire wrapped the towel around her shoulders, still studying him. You're a good person, Ethan Cole. He shook his head. I'm just a guy with a spare room. No, you're not. Before he could respond, a small voice drifted down from upstairs. Daddy? Ethan's heart jumped. He glanced at the ceiling, then back at Claire. "Stay here. I'll be right back." He took the stairs two at a time, slipping into Mia's room. She was sitting up in bed, rabbit clutched to her chest, eyes sleepy and confused. "Hey, Bug," Ethan said softly, kneeling beside her. "What's wrong?" "I heard noises." "Sorry, I was just moving some stuff in the garage. Go back to sleep." Mia rubbed her eyes. "Is everything okay?" Ethan smoothed her hair back. "Everything's fine. I promise." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded and lay back down. Ethan tucked the blanket around her, kissed her forehead, and waited until her breathing evened out. When he came back downstairs, Claire was still standing in the kitchen, towel wrapped tight, looking lost. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, she's back asleep." Ethan grabbed another towel and dried his own hair. "Come on, I'll show you the guest room." The guest room was small, barely more than a closet with a bed, but it was clean and the sheets were fresh, and there was a window that looked out over the backyard. Claire stood in the doorway, taking it in. "Bathroom's across the hall," Ethan said. "Towels are in the closet. There's coffee in the kitchen if you're up before me, which you probably won't be. I'm usually up by 6. "This is more than enough," Claire said quietly. "It's not much. It's a roof, and it's warm. That's everything right now." Ethan nodded. He should have left, should have said goodnight and gone to his own room. But something kept him in the doorway, watching the way Claire's shoulders finally started to relax. "Ethan," she said, turning to face him, "why did you really do this?" He thought about lying, thought about giving her some easy answer about being neighborly or doing the right thing, but the truth slipped out instead. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything," he said quietly. "And I know what it's like to need help and not have anyone willing to give it." Claire's expression softened. "Your wife. 3 years ago. Cancer. It was fast." "I'm sorry." "Me too." Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets. "Anyway, you don't have to go through this alone. Not tonight." Claire's eyes glistened, but she blinked it away. "Thank you." "Get some sleep, Claire." "You too." Ethan closed the door and stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening to the rain finally start to ease. What the hell had he just done? Yep. Morning came too fast. Ethan woke to his alarm at 6, the way he always did. For a moment, he forgot about the night before. Forgot about Claire, the rain, the boxes in his garage. Then he heard water running in the bathroom across the hall, and it all came rushing back. He sat up, rubbing his face. This was real. He'd invited a woman he barely knew to live in his house. With his daughter. Without thinking it through. Without planning. Without any of the careful consideration he applied to every other aspect of his life. Panic tried to claw its way up his throat. Then he heard Mia's door open, and he forced himself to breathe. One thing at a time. He got dressed, pulled on a hoodie, and headed downstairs. Mia was already in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, pouring cereal into a bowl with intense concentration. "Morning, Bug," Ethan said, kissing the top of her head. "Morning, Daddy." She looked up at him, frowning slightly. "Why were you in the garage last night?" Ethan grabbed the milk from the fridge. "I was helping our neighbor. She had some trouble with her landlord." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where she needed a place to stay for a little while." Mia's eyes widened. "She's here? In our house?" "Yeah, in the guest room." "Is she nice?" Ethan poured milk over Mia's cereal. "I think so. You'll meet her soon." "What's her name?" "Claire." Mia repeated the name quietly, testing it out. Then she took a bite of cereal and seemed satisfied. Ethan started making coffee, trying to ignore the tightness in his chest. This was fine. It was all fine, just temporary, just a few days. Then the bathroom door opened upstairs and footsteps moved across the hallway. Claire appeared at the top of the stairs a moment later, hair still damp, dressed in clean clothes she must have pulled from one of the boxes. She paused when she saw them in the kitchen, uncertainty flickering across her face. "Good morning," she said carefully. Mia's head whipped around. She stared at Claire with wide eyes, cereal spoon frozen halfway to her mouth. Ethan stepped in. "Claire, this is Mia. Mia, this is Claire. She's going to be staying with us for a little while." Claire came down the stairs slowly, offering a small smile. "Hi, Mia." Mia didn't say anything, just stared. Ethan resisted the urge to fill the silence. Finally, Mia set down her spoon. Do you like cereal? Claire blinked, clearly not expecting that question. Yes? What kind? I don't know. Most kinds, I guess. Mia considered this. Then she pushed her bowl toward Claire. You can have some of mine. Claire's expression softened. That's really sweet, but I'm okay. You eat your breakfast. Are you sure? I'm sure. Mia pulled the bowl back and took another bite, still watching Claire like she was trying to figure something out. Ethan exhaled quietly. That could have gone worse. Coffee? He asked Claire. Please, she said, relief clear in her voice. He poured her a cup, and they stood in the kitchen together, awkward and unsure, but not hostile. Mia ate her cereal. Claire sipped her coffee. Ethan leaned against the counter and wondered how long this strange new normal would last. I'll start looking for a place today, Claire said quietly. I don't want to overstay. You're not, Ethan replied. Take your time. Figure out what you need. I'll pay rent for the room. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Claire's voice was firm. I'm not a charity case. If I'm staying here, I'm paying my share. Ethan studied her for a moment. Pride. He understood that. Okay, we'll figure out something fair. Claire nodded. Thank you. They stood in silence for another beat, and then Mia hopped down from her chair. I'm going to get dressed, she announced. Good idea, Bug. We leave in 20 minutes. Mia ran upstairs, leaving Ethan and Claire alone in the kitchen. She's sweet, Claire said. She's everything, Ethan replied without thinking. Claire's expression softened. You're a good dad. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. Ethan met her eyes, and for a moment something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. Two people who'd been through hell and were still trying to build something on the other side. Then Mia's voice echoed down the stairs. Daddy, I can't find my blue shirt. And the moment broke. Coming, Ethan called back. He glanced at Claire. Make yourself at home. Seriously, food's in the fridge. Just help yourself. Thank you, Ethan. He nodded and headed upstairs, leaving Claire standing in his kitchen, coffee in hand, looking like she still couldn't quite believe this was real. The day unfolded in a strange rhythm. Ethan took Mia to school, came back to find Claire organizing boxes in the garage. They worked side by side, not talking much, just moving, sorting, stacking. She was methodical, efficient. He liked that about her. By noon, the garage looked almost normal again. You didn't have to help, Claire said, wiping dust off her hands. Neither did you, Ethan replied. This is my garage. She smiled, just a little. Fair point. They went inside for lunch. Sandwiches, nothing fancy. They ate in comfortable silence, and Ethan realized he didn't mind having her there. The house felt less empty, less quiet. It was dangerous, that feeling, because quiet was safe. Quiet meant no one could get hurt. But Claire wasn't asking for anything, wasn't pushing. She was just there, present, real. After lunch, Ethan went back to his workshop. He had orders to fill, custom furniture pieces for clients who'd been patient enough to wait while he juggled single parenthood and a small business. Claire disappeared into the guest room for a while, probably making calls, trying to figure out her next move. The afternoon stretched long and calm. Then, at 3:30, a truck pulled into the driveway. Ethan heard it before he saw it, an engine rumbling, gravel crunching. He looked up from the table saw, frowning. Through the window, he saw a man step out of a beat-up pickup, mid-50s, thick around the middle, wearing a scowl like it was part of his uniform. Ethan's gut tightened. He knew exactly who this was. The landlord. Ethan set down his tools and walked outside, keeping his expression neutral. The man was already halfway across the driveway, heading straight for the boxes still stacked in the garage. "Can I help you?" Ethan asked, voice calm. The man turned, sizing him up. "You Ethan Cole?" "That's right." "Where's Claire Morgan?" "Not here." The landlord's eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me. I know she's been here. Her car's right there." Ethan crossed his arms. "What do you want?" "I want my property back. She took things that don't belong to her." Pretty sure everything in those boxes belongs to her. Not according to the lease. What lease? The one you violated by dumping her stuff outside without notice? The landlord's face darkened. You don't know what you're talking about. Try me. For a long moment they stood there in the driveway, tension crackling between them. Ethan didn't move, didn't blink. Finally, the landlord pointed a thick finger at him. You tell her she's got 48 hours to pay what she owes, or I'm filing charges. For what? Theft, destruction of property, breaking the lease, take your pick. Ethan's jaw tightened. She doesn't owe you anything. That's not what the paperwork says. Then show me the paperwork. The landlord sneered. You her lawyer now? No, just someone who doesn't like bullies. The man's expression twisted into something ugly. He stepped closer, close enough that Ethan could smell stale cigarettes and cheap cologne. You don't want to get involved in this, the landlord said quietly. Trust me. Ethan held his ground. I'm already involved. Then you're as stupid as she is. Before Ethan could respond, the front door opened and Claire stepped outside. What's going on? She asked, voice tight. The landlord turned, a nasty smile spreading across his face. There she is. We were just talking about you. Claire's expression went cold. Get off this property. I will, as soon as you pay what you owe. I don't owe you anything. You changed the locks without notice. You violated the lease, not me. That's not how I remember it. I have documentation. The landlord laughed, harsh and mocking. Good luck with that. Claire stepped closer, shoulders squared. I've already filed a complaint with the Tenant Rights Board. You're going to have a very hard time explaining why you illegally evicted me. The landlord's smile faded. You can't prove anything. Yes, I can. For a moment no one spoke. Then the landlord turned back to Ethan. You sure you want to harbor a liar? I'm sure I want you off my property, Ethan said evenly. Now. The man's jaw worked. He looked like he wanted to argue, maybe even swing, but something in Ethan's expression must have warned him off. This isn't over, the landlord spat. Yeah, Ethan replied. I think it is. The landlord stormed back to his truck, slamming the door hard enough to make the whole vehicle shake. He peeled out of the driveway, tires spitting gravel. Ethan watched him go, pulse pounding in his ears. Claire let out a shaky breath. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, Ethan said. I did. She looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her eyes. He's not going to let this go. Good. Neither am I. Claire's expression softened. Ethan, you're staying here, he said firmly, as long as you need to, and if that asshole comes back, we'll deal with it. We? Ethan met her eyes. We. For the first time since the rain, Claire smiled, really smiled. Small and tentative, but real. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. They stood there in the driveway, afternoon sun breaking through the clouds, and Ethan realized something had shifted. This wasn't just about helping a neighbor anymore. This was about standing up to the kind of cruelty he'd spent his whole life trying to protect his daughter from. And maybe, just maybe, it was about not being alone. That evening, after Mia was in bed, Ethan and Claire sat at the kitchen table with mugs of tea and a laptop open between them. Show me what you have, Ethan said. Claire pulled up files, photos of the eviction notice, screenshots of text messages, copies of the lease agreement. She walked him through it, methodical and precise, and Ethan listened carefully. He's screwed, Ethan said finally. If you file this with the tenant board, he's going to lose. Maybe, but it'll take time, and lawyers. Do you have a lawyer? Claire hesitated. Not yet. Ethan pulled the laptop closer, fingers already moving across the keyboard. Let's find you one. They worked late into the night, building a case. Ethan made notes. Claire organized documents. Somewhere along the way, the tea went cold and the conversation shifted, less about the landlord, more about life. Claire told him about her job, marketing, freelance. Barely enough to cover rent, but she was good at it. Ethan told her about the workshop, custom furniture, a dream he'd built from nothing after his wife died. They talked about loss, about starting over, about the weight of doing it alone. And for the first time in 3 years, Ethan didn't feel quite so heavy. "Thank you," Claire said finally, closing the laptop, "for all of this. You don't have to keep thanking me." "Yes, I do." She looked at him, eyes serious. "You gave me a place to land, Ethan. That's not nothing." He shrugged, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "You would have figured it out." "Maybe, but I didn't have to, because of you." Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Claire stood, stretching. "I should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow." "Yeah, me too." She paused at the doorway, looking back. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Claire." She disappeared upstairs, and Ethan sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the cold mug of tea. He'd meant it as a joke. "You could move in with me." But somewhere between the rain and the landlord and the late-night planning sessions, it had stopped being temporary. It had started to feel like something real. And that terrified him. Because the last time he let someone in, the last time he built something real, it had been ripped away. But Claire wasn't asking for forever. She was just asking for now. And maybe, Ethan thought, that was enough. That's it. The next morning, Claire came downstairs to find Mia at the kitchen table, drawing with crayons. "Hi," Mia said, not looking up. "Hi," Claire replied, pouring herself coffee. "Can you draw?" Claire glanced at the paper. "A little. Why?" "I need help with the clouds. Mine look weird." Claire sat down beside her, studying the drawing. "What are you making?" "A house with a yard and a dog. Do you have a dog?" "Not yet, but Daddy says maybe someday," Claire smiled. "Sounds like a good someday." Mia looked up at her serious. "Are you staying here forever?" The question hit harder than it should have. "No," Claire said gently, "just for a little while." "Oh." Mia went back to her drawing, adding more clouds. "That's okay. You can come back and visit, though." "I'd like that." They drew together in silence, and when Ethan came downstairs 15 minutes later, he found them laughing over a lopsided tree. Something warm settled in his chest. This was dangerous. But maybe, just maybe, it was worth it. 3 days turned into a week, and the rhythm of their makeshift household began to feel less like an accident and more like intention. Ethan noticed the small changes first, the way Claire folded dish towels in neat thirds and hung them on the oven handle, the scent of real coffee, not the instant stuff he'd been surviving on, filling the kitchen each morning. How Mia's backpack always appeared by the door, fully packed, because Claire had started checking it the night before. He didn't ask her to do any of it. She just did. And Ethan, who'd spent 3 years holding his world together with duct tape and sheer stubbornness, didn't know what to do with the help. On Thursday morning, he found Claire in the garage before sunrise, inventory spreadsheet open on her phone, reorganizing his lumber by size and type. "You don't have to do this," he said from the doorway. She didn't startle, just glanced over her shoulder. "I know, but I'm staying here rent-free. We talked about rent. You're paying. $300 a month is not market rate, Ethan. It's insulting. It's fair. It's charity." Claire set down a piece of oak, dusting her hands on her jeans. "Let me help. I need to feel useful." Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she didn't owe him anything beyond what they'd agreed, but the look in her eyes stopped him. That same fierce pride he'd seen the first night standing in the rain. "Fine," he said, "but if you're organizing my shop, you're doing it right. That 2x4 goes with the pine, not the oak." Claire's lips twitched. Noted. They worked in comfortable silence as dawn broke, and Ethan realized he'd started looking forward to these moments. The quiet. The company. The way Claire moved through space like she belonged there. It scared the hell out of him. By the time Mia woke up, the garage was transformed. Tools hung on labeled pegboards, sandpaper sorted by grit. Even the coffee cans full of screws had been emptied, sorted, and relocated to clear plastic bins. "It looks like a real workshop now," Claire said, surveying their work. "It was real before." "No, before it was functional chaos. Now it's professional." Ethan looked around, seeing his space through her eyes. She wasn't wrong. "Thanks. Don't mention it." Claire headed toward the house, pausing at the door. "Oh, And I signed us up for the tenant rights clinic on Saturday, 10 a.m. They do free consultations. Us? You're my witness, and you have a better memory for dates than I do. Ethan started to protest, then stopped. The landlord had made this his problem the moment he showed up in Ethan's driveway making threats. And if Claire needed backup, he'd be there. 10 a.m., he confirmed. I'll see if my neighbor can watch Mia. Claire smiled, quick and genuine, and disappeared inside. Ethan stood in his newly organized garage and wondered when exactly he'd stopped thinking of Claire as a temporary guest. Atami, Friday afternoon brought rain again, softer this time, pattering against the windows while Mia sprawled on the living room floor with her homework. Claire sat on the couch, laptop balanced on her knees, finishing a project for a client. Ethan was at the kitchen table reviewing invoices. It felt domestic, natural, terrifying. Daddy? Mia called out. How do you spell beautiful? Ethan started to answer, but Claire beat him to it. Beautiful, she said, without looking up from her screen. Mia wrote it down carefully, then frowned. That doesn't look right. It never does, Claire replied. But trust me, that's how it's spelled. Mia accepted this wisdom and went back to her worksheet. Ethan watched the exchange, something warm and uncomfortable expanding in his chest. This was how it had been with Sarah. The easy partnership, the unspoken division of labor, the way parenting became a shared language. He'd forgotten what that felt like, and remembering hurt. Claire must have sensed the shift because she looked up, concern flickering across her face. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. About? Ethan hesitated. They talked about loss in abstract terms, grief as a concept, rebuilding as theory. But he hadn't told her the details. Hadn't explained how Sarah's diagnosis had come out of nowhere, how 6 months later she was gone, how he'd spent the first year after her death just trying to remember how to breathe. My wife, he said finally. Sarah. She used to help Mia with homework the same way. Claire's expression softened. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No, it's good. Ethan forced a smile. It's nice, actually. Mia needs that. What about you? The question caught him off guard. What about me? What do you need? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. Or maybe he did, but he wasn't ready to say it out loud. Before he could respond, Mia's voice cut through the moment. Claire, can you help me with number 7? I don't get it. Claire set her laptop aside and moved to the floor beside Mia. Let's see what we're working with. Ethan watched them together, Claire's dark hair falling forward as she leaned over the worksheet, Mia pointing at the problem with her pencil, both of them focused and serious. His daughter trusted Claire. Not just tolerated her, but actually trusted her. That should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Ethan's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, agreed to watch Mia, thrilled to have company for her baking marathon. By 9:30, Ethan and Claire were in his truck, headed downtown to the tenant rights clinic. Nervous? Ethan asked. Claire stared out the window. I've been documenting everything. I have proof. The law's on my side. That's not what I asked. She let out a slow breath. Yeah, I'm nervous. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. Ethan nodded and left it alone. They drove in silence for a while, the city waking up around them. Coffee shops opening, dog walkers navigating sidewalks, ordinary people living ordinary lives, unaware that somewhere in the mess of it all, two strangers were trying to build something that made sense. Can I ask you something? Claire said suddenly. Sure. Why haven't you dated anyone? Since Sarah. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That's direct. You don't have to answer. But maybe he wanted to. Maybe keeping it locked inside for 3 years had been the problem all along. I tried, he said carefully. About a year after. Friend of a friend set me up, nice woman, teacher, good sense of humor. What happened? Nothing. That was the problem. Ethan merged onto the highway, eyes on the road. She was great. Mia liked her. Everything should have worked. But all I could think about was how she wasn't Sarah. How nobody would ever be Sarah. And it felt wrong, like I was cheating on a ghost. Claire was quiet for a moment. That must have been lonely. It was easier than the alternative. Which is? Letting someone in and losing them again. The words hung in the air between them, honest and raw. Ethan hadn't meant to say it out loud, but there it was. The truth he'd been carrying like a stone in his chest. Claire reached across the console and squeezed his hand once, briefly. For what it's worth, I think Sarah would want you to be happy. How would you know? Because anyone who loved you and Mia wouldn't want you living in a holding pattern forever. Ethan's throat tightened. He didn't trust himself to respond, so he just nodded. They drove the rest of the way in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that came from understanding, from two people who'd both survived loss and were still trying to figure out what came next. The tenant rights clinic operated out of a community center that smelled like old carpet and instant coffee. A volunteer greeted them at the front desk, checked Claire's name off a list, and directed them to a small consultation room. The lawyer was younger than Ethan expected, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, wearing a blazer that had seen better days. Her name was Lisa Chen, and she wasted no time on pleasantries. "Tell me everything," she said, pulling out a notepad. Claire walked her through it. The missed rent payment that she'd tried to make up, the landlord's refusal to accept partial payment, the locks changed without notice, her belongings dumped outside in the rain. Lisa took notes, occasionally stopping Claire to ask for clarification or documentation. "Do you have photos of the eviction?" Lisa asked. Claire pulled out her phone, scrolling through images. Boxes in the rain, the new deadbolt, timestamp metadata clear on every shot. Lisa's expression hardened. This is textbook illegal eviction. He violated at least 4 tenant protection statutes. "Can I sue him?" Claire asked. "You can, and you should." Lisa leaned back in her chair. "But I'll be honest with you, lawsuits take time and money. Even if you win, collecting damages from a slumlord can be next to impossible." Ethan spoke up for the first time. "What's the alternative?" Lisa looked at him, assessing. "File a formal complaint with the Tenant Protection Board. They'll investigate, and if they find violations, they can levy fines, suspend his rental license, even force him to provide compensation. It's faster than court and doesn't require a lawyer." "How fast?" Claire asked. 6 to 8 weeks for a decision. Maybe longer if he contests it." Claire's shoulders sagged slightly. "That's not exactly fast." "No, but it's your best option unless you want to spend thousands on a lawsuit that might not go anywhere." Ethan watched Claire process this, saw the frustration flash across her face before she locked it down. She'd been hoping for a quick resolution. Instead, she was looking at months of uncertainty. "Okay," Claire said finally. "How do I file the complaint?" Lisa pulled out a packet of forms. "Fill these out. Be specific. Include every violation, every communication, every piece of evidence. The more thorough you are, the stronger your case." They spent the next hour going through paperwork. Lisa walked them through each section, highlighting what mattered, what didn't. Ethan took notes while Claire filled in blanks, her handwriting neat and precise despite the tremor in her fingers. By the time they finished, Claire looked exhausted. "One more thing," Lisa said as they stood to leave. "Does your landlord know where you're staying?" Claire and Ethan exchanged glances. "Yeah," Ethan said. "He showed up at my house earlier this week, made some threats." Lisa's expression turned serious. "Document everything. If he contacts you again, record it. If he shows up, call the police. Landlord harassment is illegal, and you need a paper trail." "Got it," Ethan said. Lisa handed Claire her business card. "If things escalate, call me. Pro bono cases are hard to take on, but I'll do what I can." Claire took the card, gratitude clear in her eyes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we win. That's all." They grabbed lunch at a diner on the way home. Greasy burgers and 2 strong coffee. Claire picked at her fries, mind clearly elsewhere. "You okay?" Ethan asked. 6 to 8 weeks, Claire said quietly. "That's a long time to be in limbo." "You're not in limbo. You have a place to stay." "Your place, not mine." Ethan set down his burger. "Claire, I'm not complaining. I'm grateful. You've done more for me than anyone has in years." She looked up, eyes fierce. "But I need my own space, my own life." I can't keep living in your guest room indefinitely. Why not? The question came out before Ethan could stop it. Claire stared at him. What? Why not? Ethan repeated, leaning back in the booth. You're paying rent. You're helping with Mia. The house doesn't feel empty anymore, so why is staying such a bad thing? Because it's not my home, Ethan. It could be. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Claire shook her head slowly. You don't mean that. I don't mean, don't I? You're just being kind, like always. No. Ethan leaned forward, voice low and serious. I'm being honest. For the first time in 3 years, my house feels like more than just a place where Mia and I exist. It feels alive, and that's because of you. Claire's breath caught. Ethan, I'm not asking you to stay forever. I'm just saying you don't have to rush to leave. For a long moment, they sat in silence. The diner hummed around them, other conversations, clinking dishes, the hiss of the griddle. But in their booth, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. What are we doing? Claire asked finally, voice barely above a whisper. Ethan wanted to say he didn't know, that he was as confused as she was, that none of this made sense, but that would have been a lie. I think, he said carefully, we're figuring it out as we go. Claire's eyes searched his face. And Mia? Mia's crazy about you. That's not what I'm asking. I know. Ethan took a breath. If this goes wrong, if we try something and it doesn't work, it'll hurt her. I know that. But I also know that hiding from everything that could hurt isn't living. It's just surviving. Is that what you've been doing? Surviving? Yeah, for 3 years, and I'm tired of it. Claire reached across the table, fingers brushing his. I'm scared. Me too. I don't want to mess this up. Neither do I. They sat like that for a moment, hands almost touching, both of them on the edge of something neither could name. Then Claire's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen and went pale. What is it? Ethan asked. Claire turned the phone so he could see, a text message from an unknown number. You're going to regret filing that complaint. I know people. I know where you live. Watch your back. Ethan's blood went cold. That's him. Yeah. We're calling the police. He didn't actually threaten violence, just implied it. I don't care. Ethan pulled out his own phone. Lisa said to document harassment. This counts. Claire didn't argue. She just stared at the message, fear and anger warring on her face. Ethan made the call. The dispatcher took the information, said an officer would follow up within 24 hours. It wasn't much, but it was something. When he hung up, Claire was still staring at her phone. Hey, Ethan said gently. Look at me. She did. He's trying to scare you. Don't let him. What if he's serious? Then we deal with it, together. Claire's jaw tightened. I should leave. Go somewhere else. I'm putting you and Mia at risk. No. Ethan, no, he repeated, voice firm. You're not leaving, and you're sure as hell not letting some bully chase you away. We fight this. All of it. Claire's eyes glistened. Why are you doing this? Because it's right, and because I... He stopped himself, the words catching in his throat. Because what? Ethan met her gaze, steady and certain. Because I care about you, and I'm not walking away. The admission hung in the air between them, fragile and huge. Claire's breath hitched. Then she stood, grabbed her jacket, and headed for the door without a word. Ethan threw cash on the table and followed her out. They drove home in tense silence. Claire stared out the window, arms crossed, walls up. Ethan gripped the steering wheel, replaying the conversation in his head, wondering if he'd pushed too hard, said too much. But he'd meant it, every word. When they pulled into the driveway, Claire spoke for the first time since the diner. I need to think. Okay. Alone. Okay. She got out of the truck and disappeared into the house without looking back. Ethan sat in the driveway, engine ticking as it cooled, and wondered if he'd just ruined everything. Mrs. Chen brought Mia home an hour later, waving off Ethan's thanks with a smile and a container of fresh-baked cookies. Mia bounced inside, chattering about the chocolate chip recipe, blissfully unaware of the tension humming through the house. "Where's Claire?" she asked, looking around. "In her room," Ethan said. "She's not feeling well." Mia frowned. "Is she sick?" "Just tired. She'll be okay." Mia accepted this and settled on the couch with her cookies. Ethan retreated to the garage, needing space to think, to breathe, to figure out what the hell he was doing. He'd been careful for 3 years. Controlled. He'd built a life that worked, that kept Mia safe and stable. And in 2 weeks, Claire had walked into it and turned everything sideways. The smart thing would be to pull back, reestablish boundaries, remind himself that this was temporary. But he didn't want to. For the first time since Sarah died, he wanted something more than just getting through the day. He wanted Claire to stay. And that terrified him. Dinner was quiet. Claire emerged from her room long enough to eat, but she didn't make conversation. Mia tried to fill the silence with stories from Mrs. Chen's kitchen, but even her enthusiasm couldn't break the tension. After dinner, Mia went upstairs to read. Claire started washing dishes. Ethan dried. They worked in silence, the rhythm familiar but strained. Finally, Claire spoke. "I'm sorry about earlier." Ethan set down the dish towel. "You don't have to apologize." "I do. You were being honest, and I ran. You needed space. That's okay." Claire turned off the water, hand still in the sink. "I'm not good at this." "At what?" "Letting people in, trusting that they'll stay." Ethan leaned against the counter. "Yeah, I get that." Claire turned to face him, eyes red but dry. "My ex-husband left 2 years ago. Just walked out one day, said he couldn't do it anymore. No warning, no discussion, just gone. I'm sorry. I survived, built a new life, convinced myself I was better off alone." She crossed her arms, defensive. "And then my landlord screwed me over, and you showed up in the rain like some kind of miracle, and now I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that." "You don't have to do anything." "Yes, I do, because you said you care about me, and I—" Her voice broke. "I care about you too, and that scares me more than any threat from my landlord ever could." Ethan's heart hammered. "Why?" "Because caring about someone means they can hurt you, and I've been hurt enough." "So have I." "Then why are we doing this?" Ethan pushed off the counter, closing the distance between them. "Because maybe, just maybe, it's worth the risk." Claire looked up at him, vulnerability written across her face. "What if it isn't?" "Then at least we tried." For a long moment they stood there in the kitchen, close enough to touch, both of them afraid to take the next step. Then Claire reached up and cupped his face with one hand. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Neither do I," Ethan replied. "But you still want to try?" "Yeah, I do." Claire's thumb brushed across his cheekbone, tentative and searching. "Okay. Okay? Okay." She smiled, small and uncertain, but real. "Let's figure it out as we go." Ethan pulled her into a hug, arms wrapping around her like he could shield her from every threat, every fear, every broken promise. Claire pressed her face against his chest, breathing him in, letting herself believe just for a moment that maybe this could work. "We should probably talk about ground rules," she said, voice muffled against his shirt. Ethan laughed, the sound surprising him. "Yeah, probably." "And boundaries, for Mia's sake." "Definitely. And what happens if this doesn't work out?" Ethan pulled back just enough to look at her. "How about we focus on making it work first?" Claire met his eyes, searching for doubt, for hesitation. She didn't find any. "Okay," she said again. Ethan kissed her forehead, gentle and deliberate. Not a promise of forever, just a promise of now. And for now, that was enough. The weekend passed in careful steps. They didn't hide what was happening, but they didn't broadcast it either. Mia noticed the way Claire and Ethan stood a little closer, smiled a little more. She didn't ask questions, just seemed pleased that the tension had eased. On Sunday afternoon, they took Mia to the park. Ethan pushed her on the swings while Claire sat on a bench, laptop open, finishing work. It felt normal, easy, dangerous, because easy meant letting his guard down. And Ethan hadn't let his guard down in 3 years, but watching Mia laugh as she soared higher, watching Claire smile at something on her screen, Ethan thought maybe, just maybe, it was time to try. That evening, after Mia was asleep, Claire and Ethan sat on the back porch with mugs of tea, watching the stars. "I filed the complaint," Claire said quietly. "This morning." "Good. Lisa said we should hear something in a few weeks." "And until then?" Claire leaned her head against his shoulder. "Until then, we wait. And we watch our backs." Ethan wrapped an arm around her. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you." "I know." They sat in comfortable silence, the night settling around them. Then Claire's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and went rigid. "What?" Ethan asked. Claire turned the phone toward him. Another message. Same unknown number. Last chance. Drop the complaint or you'll regret it. Both of you. Ethan's jaw clenched. "That's it. We're getting a restraining order." "On what grounds? Threatening texts?" "That's enough." "Not in this state. He has to make a credible threat of violence." "That sounds pretty credible to me." Claire shook her head. "I'm not giving up. But I'm also not putting Mia in danger." Ethan stood, pacing the porch. "So what do we do?" "We document everything. We stay vigilant, and we don't back down." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd been dumped in the rain 2 weeks ago, who'd lost everything and was still standing, still fighting. "You're stronger than you think," he said. Claire smiled sadly. "I don't feel strong." "You are. And we're going to get through this." "Together?" "Together." Claire stood and walked into his arms, and they held each other under the stars, two broken people trying to build something whole. And in the house behind them, Mia slept peacefully, unaware of the threat circling her small world. But Ethan was aware. And he'd be damned if he let anyone hurt the people he cared about. Not again. Never again. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray sky that promised nothing good. Ethan woke early, checked all the locks twice, and stood in Mia's doorway watching her sleep for longer than necessary. The threatening text had shifted something in him, turned protective instinct into hypervigilance. Claire was already in the kitchen when he came downstairs, phone pressed to her ear, voice low and tense. "I understand that, but he's escalating," she said. "The texts are clearly threatening. Yes, I have screenshots. Fine, I'll bring them in this afternoon." She hung up and rubbed her temples. "Police?" Ethan asked. "Yeah, they want me to file a formal report. Said they can't do much about texts, but at least it'll be documented." Claire looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "The officer I spoke to basically told me to change my number and avoid contact." "That's it?" "That's it." Ethan's hands curled into fist. "So we're supposed to just wait until he does something worse?" "Apparently." Claire poured coffee with shaking hands. "I'm sorry. I should have never put you in this position. Stop apologizing." "He threatened you too, Ethan, because of me." "No, because he's a bully who got caught breaking the law." Ethan took the coffee pot from her before she could spill it. "This isn't your fault." Claire leaned against the counter, arms wrapped around herself. "Doesn't feel that way." Before Ethan could respond, footsteps pounded down the stairs. Mia appeared in the kitchen, already dressed for school, backpack in hand. "Morning," she announced cheerfully. "Can we have pancakes?" The normalcy of the request, the innocent expectation that the world would keep being safe and predictable, hit Ethan like a physical blow. "Sure, Bug," he managed. "Pancakes it is." Claire met his eyes over Mia's head, and he saw his own fear reflected back. But she smiled at Mia anyway, voice steady as she asked, "Chocolate chip or blueberry?" "Both. Of course both," Claire said, already pulling ingredients from the cabinet. They moved through the morning routine like actors playing parts. Ethan made coffee and packed lunches. Claire cooked pancakes and helped Mia find her library book. Mia chattered about her upcoming field trip, blissfully unaware of the tension crackling beneath the surface. But when Ethan walked Mia to the bus stop, he found himself scanning every car, every face, every shadow. The landlord's truck wasn't there. No one suspicious lurked nearby, just normal Monday morning suburbia. It didn't make him feel any better. "Daddy?" Mia tugged his hand. "You're squishing my fingers." Ethan loosened his grip immediately. "Sorry, Bug." "Are you worried about something?" "No, just thinking about work." Mia studied his face with the unsettling perception 7-year-olds sometimes had. Is Claire okay? She seems sad. Huh? She's fine, just tired. Because of her mean landlord? Ethan's stomach dropped. What do you know about that? I heard you and Claire talking last night. He sent mean messages, right? Damn, he thought they'd been quiet enough. Ethan knelt down to Mia's level. Yeah, he did, but it's adult stuff, okay? Nothing for you to worry about. But you're worried. I'm handling it. And Claire's staying with us so she's safe? Something like that. Mia considered this, then threw her arms around his neck in a fierce hug. I'm glad she's staying. I like her. Ethan's throat tightened. Me too, Bug. The school bus rumbled up, brakes hissing. Mia pulled back, grabbed her backpack, and bounded aboard without a backward glance. 7 years old and fearless. Ethan watched the bus disappear around the corner and wondered how long he could keep her world that innocent. Check. He came home to find Claire on the phone again, pacing the living room with tight, angry strides. I don't care what the processing time is, she was saying. I filed the complaint on Sunday. It's been confirmed. So when can I expect... She stopped, listening. 2 weeks just for the initial review? That's unacceptable. I understand you're overwhelmed, but this man is harassing me. Yes, I have documentation. Fine, I'll wait for the call. She hung up and hurled the phone onto the couch. Tenant board? Ethan asked. Useless bureaucrats. Claire pressed her palms against her eyes. They won't even assign an investigator for 2 weeks, and that's just to review the case, not actually do anything about it. What about the restraining order? The police said I don't have grounds. The texts are threatening but not specific enough. I'd need proof of stalking, physical intimidation, or an actual assault. That's insane. That's the law. Claire dropped her hands, face flushed with frustration. So basically, we sit around and wait for him to escalate enough to qualify for protection. Ethan's jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed at him to do something. Confront the landlord, file more reports, build higher walls. But the system wasn't built for prevention, only reaction. There has to be something we can do, he said. Like what? Camp out on his lawn? That'll get us arrested, not him. Security cameras. Claire blinked. What? Security cameras. For the house. Front door, driveway, garage. If he shows up here again, we'll have video proof. That's documented harassment. Claire's expression shifted from frustration to consideration. That might actually work. I can install them today. Basic system isn't expensive. Ethan, you don't have to... Yes, I do. He pulled out his phone, already searching for options. This is my house, my daughter. I should have done this years ago anyway. Claire watched him scroll through product reviews, something soft and uncertain crossing her face. Thank you. Stop thanking me. I can't help it. You keep doing things that deserve thanks. Ethan looked up from his phone. She was standing in the middle of his living room in worn jeans and one of his old sweatshirts she'd borrowed that morning, hair pulled back, no makeup, completely beautiful. And terrified. He crossed to her in 3 strides and pulled her close. We're going to figure this out, he said against her hair. I promise. Claire's arms wrapped around his waist, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting. What if we can't? Then we adapt. But we don't give up. He could hurt you, or Mia. He won't. You don't know that. No, but I know I'm not letting fear make my decisions anymore. Ethan pulled back just enough to see her face. Are you? Claire searched his eyes, then shook her head slowly. No, I'm done running. Good. He kissed her forehead, soft and certain. Then let's stop playing defense and start fighting back. By noon, Ethan had ordered a security camera system with next-day installation. By 2, he'd contacted Lisa Chen to update her on the harassment and ask about next steps. By 3, he was in his workshop, channeling anxiety into productivity when his phone rang. Unknown number. His gut clenched. He almost didn't answer, then remembered Lisa's advice about documentation and hit record before accepting the call. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice Ethan recognized immediately. You think you're smart? You and your little girlfriend? The landlord, calling from a burner phone, probably. Ethan kept his voice level. This conversation is being recorded. You're aware of that? A pause. Then a laugh, low and mean. Record whatever you want. Won't change anything. What do you want? I want that bitch to drop the complaint, and I want you to mind your own business. Not going to happen. Then you're going to regret it, both of you. Ethan's free hand curled into a fist, but his voice stayed calm. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You have 48 hours to convince her to drop it. After that, things get ugly. Ugly how? Use your imagination. The landlord's voice dripped with malice. Nice workshop you got in that garage. Be a shame if something happened to it. Or that pretty truck of yours. Or if you come near my property or my family, Ethan cut in, voice dropping to something cold and dangerous, I will make sure you spend the rest of your miserable life in a cell. Are we clear? Silence on the other end. Then the line went dead. Ethan stood in his workshop, phone still recording, heart hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. His hands were shaking, not with fear, but with fury. This man had just threatened everything Ethan had built, his livelihood, his home, his daughter. He saved the recording, sent a copy to his email and to Lisa Chen, then went inside to find Claire. She was at the kitchen table with her laptop, working on a client project. She looked up when he entered, and whatever she saw on his face made her stand immediately. What happened? He called me. Ethan played the recording. Claire's face went pale, then red, then pale again. When it ended, she sat down hard. He threatened Mia, she whispered. No, he threatened my property, but the implication was clear. This is my fault. I need to leave, right now, before… No. Ethan's voice cut through her panic like a blade. Absolutely not. He's escalating because of me. He's escalating because he's a criminal who got caught. Ethan knelt in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. You leaving won't stop him. It'll just prove that threats work. Is that what you want? Claire's breath came fast and shallow. I want you and Mia safe. We are safe. We're taking precautions. We have evidence. We're doing everything right. What if it's not enough? Then we do more. Ethan took her hands. They were ice cold. But we don't run, and we definitely don't let him win. Claire stared at their joined hands, tears welling. I'm scared. Me too. What do? We take this recording to the police. We file for a restraining order with actual evidence. We make his life hell until he backs down. Ethan squeezed her hands gently. And we trust that the system will work. The system's been useless so far. Then we make noise until someone listens. Claire let out a shaky laugh. You really think we can win this? I think we don't have a choice but to try. For a long moment they stayed like that. Ethan kneeling, Claire sitting, both of them holding on. Then Claire wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. Okay, she said. Let's go to the police. Well, the police station smelled like stale coffee and bureaucracy. They waited 40 minutes to speak with an officer, then another 20 while he reviewed the recording. Detective Morris was mid-50s, tired eyes, the look of someone who'd heard every sob story twice. But when he listened to the recording, his expression hardened. This is explicit threat of property destruction, he said. And the implication of physical harm to you and your family gives us grounds for an emergency restraining order. Relief flooded through Ethan. Finally, someone taking this seriously. How long does that take? Claire asked. I can file the paperwork today. Judge will review it within 24 hours. If approved, Mr. Richardson will be served immediately and required to stay at least 500 feet from you, your residence, and anyone in your household. What happens if he violates it? Ethan asked. Arrest on site. No warning. Morris handed back Ethan's phone. Keep that recording safe. Make multiple copies, and from now on, don't answer calls from unknown numbers. Let everything go to voicemail so it's documented. Can you trace the call? Claire asked. Probably a burner phone, but we'll try. In the meantime, I want you to file a formal harassment complaint. I'll attach it to the restraining order application. They spent another hour filling out forms, giving statements, providing documentation. By the time they finished, the sun was setting and Mia's bus would be arriving soon. Ethan drove home in tense silence, one hand on the wheel, the other holding Claire's. She stared out the window, processing. "Do you think it'll work?" she asked finally. "The restraining order? Yeah. He'd be stupid to violate it. He's been pretty stupid so far. Then he'll get arrested, and we'll be done with him." Claire turned to look at him. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple, but it's the right move." "How do you stay so calm?" Ethan's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm not calm. I'm furious. But falling apart won't help Mia, and it won't help you. So I'm choosing to channel it into something useful." Claire studied his profile in the fading light. "You're a good man, Ethan Cole. I'm just doing what needs to be done." "No, you're doing more than that. She stopped, searching for words. "You're fighting a battle that isn't even yours." "It became mine the moment he threatened my family." The word hung in the air between them. Family, not tenant, not house guest. Family. Claire's eyes glistened, but she smiled. "Yeah, I guess it did." They pulled into the driveway just as the school bus rounded the corner. Mia hopped off, backpack bouncing, waving at the driver. "Hey, Bug," Ethan called. "How was school?" "Good. We started our butterfly project today." Mia ran to Claire instead of Ethan, grabbing her hand. "Can you help me make a poster? We need pictures of different butterflies and—" She kept talking, pulling Claire toward the house, and Ethan followed behind, watching them together. This was worth fighting for. That night, after Mia was asleep and the dishes were done, Ethan and Claire sat on the couch going through legal documents. Lisa Chen had emailed a detailed breakdown of what to expect from the tenant board process, what the restraining order would and wouldn't prevent, and what their options were if Richardson continued to escalate. "It's a lot," Claire said, closing the laptop with a sigh. "We'll take it one step at a time." "And if the restraining order doesn't stop him?" Ethan set down the papers he'd been reviewing. "Then we escalate too, criminal charges, civil lawsuit, whatever it takes." Claire leaned her head against his shoulder. They'd been doing this more, casual touches, comfortable closeness, nothing dramatic, just the quiet intimacy of two people learning to trust each other. "I keep waiting for you to change your mind," Claire said softly, "to decide this is too much trouble and ask me to leave." "Not going to happen." "You say that now, but, Claire," Ethan shifted so he could see her face. "I spent 3 years building walls, keeping everyone at a distance, convinced that was the only way to protect myself and Mia, and then you showed up in the rain and I broke every rule I'd made. That was just kindness." "No, it wasn't." Ethan took a breath. "It was the first time in 3 years I felt something other than grief or responsibility. It was the first time I looked at someone and thought, maybe, just maybe, I could have more than just survival." Claire's breath caught. "Ethan, I'm not asking you for promises. I'm not asking you to figure out the future. I'm just telling you the truth. You being here, it matters, to me and to Mia, and I'm not walking away from that." For a long moment, Claire just looked at him. Then she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't desperate or hungry. It was soft and searching, a question and an answer all at once. Ethan's hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone, and Claire pressed closer, fingers curling into his shirt. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Claire rested her forehead against his. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Of Richardson? Of this. Of feeling something real and having it ripped away." Ethan's thumb traced her jaw. "Welcome to the club." Claire laughed softly. "We're a mess, and yeah, but we're a mess together." She kissed him again, slower this time, and Ethan felt something in his chest crack open, something that had been locked tight since Sarah died. It hurt, and it felt good, and it scared him senseless. But he didn't pull away. When they finally went to bed, separate rooms, unspoken agreement that slow was better, Ethan lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The fear was still there, the grief, the worry that letting someone in meant setting himself up for devastation. But underneath it all was something new. Hope. The next morning brought frost and crystal clear skies. Ethan was installing the security cameras when a patrol car pulled into the driveway. Detective Morris stepped out, folder in hand. "Mr. Cole, Miss Morgan?" Claire appeared from inside, anxiety written across her face. "Is everything okay?" "Restraining order was approved. Richardson was served an hour ago." Relief washed over Claire's face. "So he can't contact us anymore?" "Can't contact, can't come within 500 feet of this property, can't threaten or harass either of you in any way." Morris handed over the documentation. "Violation means immediate arrest. No exceptions." "Thank you," Ethan said, genuinely grateful. "Don't thank me yet. These orders only work if the subject respects the law." Morris's expression turned serious. "Richardson's got a history, multiple complaints from former tenants, a few misdemeanor charges. He's not someone who takes losing well." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying keep those cameras running, keep your doors locked, and call 911 if you see him anywhere near here." After Morris left, Claire stood in the driveway holding the restraining order like it might disintegrate. "It's over," she said. "Right? This means it's over?" Ethan wished he could say yes, but Morris's warning echoed in his head. "It means we have legal protection," he said carefully. "And that's a good thing." Claire looked at him. "But you don't think he'll stop?" "I think we stay alert." "God, I'm so tired of being afraid." Ethan pulled her close. "I know, but we're almost through this." "Are we?" "Yeah, we are." He believed it. Mostly. 2 days passed in cautious optimism. No calls, no texts, no sign of Richardson. The security cameras recorded nothing but neighbors walking dogs and mail delivery. Life returned to its new normal. Ethan working in the shop, Claire managing clients from the kitchen table, Mia coming home from school with stories about butterflies and kickball. Friday afternoon, Ethan got an email from the tenant board. They'd assigned an investigator to Claire's complaint. Interview scheduled for the following week. "This is good," Claire said when he told her. "This means it's moving forward." "Yeah, it's good." That night, they celebrated with takeout pizza and a movie Mia picked. Something animated and cheerful. They sat on the couch together, Mia between them, Claire's hand resting on Ethan's knee, the kind of casual family moment that shouldn't have felt revolutionary but did. When Mia fell asleep halfway through, Ethan carried her upstairs while Claire cleaned up the pizza boxes. By the time he came back down, she was standing at the kitchen sink, staring out the window into the dark backyard. "Hey," Ethan said softly. "You okay?" "Just thinking." "About?" "How normal this feels. How easy it would be to get used to it." Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Would that be so bad?" "No, that's what scares me." Claire leaned back against him. "What happens when the restraining order expires? When the tenant board case is over? When I don't have a reason to stay?" "You don't need a reason. You just need to want to." "And if I do want to, what does that look like?" Ethan turned her around to face him. "I don't know, but I'd like to find out." Claire's eyes searched his face. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." "Ethan, I don't want to be some rebound or a placeholder." "You're not." He cupped her face in both hands. "You're the first person since Sarah who made me believe I could have a life that's more than just going through the motions. That's not a rebound. That's..." He stopped, the words catching in his throat. "That's what?" Claire prompted softly. Ethan took a breath. "That's something real." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me." "Good, because I'm falling for you too, and I'm scared out of my mind." They stood in the kitchen holding each other, two damaged people trying to believe they deserved something good. Then Ethan's phone buzzed. Security alert. Motion detected at the back door. They both froze. Ethan pulled up the camera feed. The image was grainy in the dark, but clear enough. A figure stood at the back door, testing the handle. Richardson. "Call 911, Ethan said, voice deadly calm. "Right now." Claire grabbed her phone with shaking hands while Ethan moved toward the back door. every protective instinct roaring to life. The handle rattled again, then stopped. Through the camera feed, Ethan watched Richardson pull back, disappear around the side of the house. "He's leaving," Claire whispered, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, hello? I need police at—" The sound of breaking glass cut through the night. Not the back door, the workshop. Ethan's blood went cold. "Stay here with Mia," he ordered, already moving. "Ethan, no!" But he was already out the side door, rage and fear propelling him forward. The workshop window was shattered, glass glittering on the concrete floor. Richardson stood inside, crowbar in hand, swinging at Ethan's tools, his furniture, everything he'd built. "Hey!" Ethan shouted. Richardson spun around, wild-eyed and grinning. "There you are," he said. "Wanted to make sure you got the message. Police are on their way." "Good. Let them come." Richardson swung the crowbar at a finished cabinet, wood splintering. "By the time they get here, there won't be much left." Ethan's hands curled into fists. Every instinct screamed at him to charge forward, to tackle this man and beat him unconscious. But that's what Richardson wanted. A fight, an excuse to claim self-defense. So Ethan stayed in the doorway, phone up, recording everything. "You're violating a restraining order," he said evenly. "That's a felony." "Worth it." Another swing, more destruction. "You thought you could protect her? You thought some piece of paper would stop me?" "Yeah, I did." Richardson laughed and raised the crowbar again. Then sirens split the night. Red and blue lights flooded the driveway. Richardson's expression shifted from triumph to panic in an instant. He dropped the crowbar and ran for the back of the garage. He didn't make it 3 steps before 2 officers tackled him. Ethan watched them wrestle Richardson to the ground, read him his rights, snap handcuffs around his wrists. Watched the man who'd terrorized Claire get dragged away, still shouting threats that no one cared about anymore. Then Claire was beside him, arms around his waist, shaking. "It's over," Ethan said, holding her tight. "It's really over." Claire buried her face in his chest and sobbed, not from fear, but from relief. 3 weeks of terror finally breaking. An officer approached, notepad out. "Mr. Cole, we're going to need a statement." "Yeah, of course." They spent the next hour giving statements, showing video footage, documenting damage. Detective Morris showed up personally, jaw tight with anger when he saw the destroyed workshop. "He's done," Morris said flatly. "Felony, criminal trespass, vandalism, violating a restraining order. He's looking at real time." "How much?" Claire asked. 2 years minimum, maybe more with his record." Finally, justice. By the time the police left, dawn was breaking. Ethan stood in his ruined workshop, looking at shattered wood and broken tools, and felt nothing but relief. Things could be replaced. People couldn't. Claire appeared in the doorway, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "Mia's still asleep. Slept through everything." "Good." Ethan took the coffee gratefully. "Let's keep it that way." They stood in silence, surveying the damage. "I'm sorry," Claire said finally. "Don't be. None of this is your fault." "It feels like it is." Ethan set down his coffee and pulled her close. "Listen to me. You did everything right. You stood up to a bully. You protected yourself, and now he's facing consequences. That's not something to apologize for." Claire's arms tightened around him. "I don't know what I would have done without you." "You would have survived. You're stronger than you think." "Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to find out." They held each other as the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A new day. A fresh start. And for the first time in weeks, the future didn't feel quite so terrifying. The insurance adjuster came on Monday morning, clipboard in hand, surveying the damage with practiced detachment. Ethan walked him through the workshop, pointing out the shattered window, the splintered cabinet, the gouges in his workbench where Richardson's crowbar had landed. "Total loss on the custom pieces," the adjuster said, making notes. "The tools can mostly be repaired or replaced. We'll have an estimate by end of week." "How long until I can work again?" "Depends on how fast you want to move. Clean up the glass, board the window temporarily. You could be operational in a few days." The adjuster glanced at him. "Though I'd recommend waiting for the full repair. Make sure everything's documented for the claim." Ethan nodded, but his mind was already calculating. He had 3 orders due by the end of the month. Clients who'd been patient, who'd trusted him with custom work. He couldn't afford to wait weeks for insurance paperwork. After the adjuster left, Ethan stood in the workshop alone, hands on his hips, staring at the mess. 3 years he'd built this business from nothing. 3 years of late nights and early mornings, of learning to be both father and provider, of proving he could make something work on his own terms. And Richardson had tried to destroy it in 5 minutes. The anger came back then, hot and sharp. Not the cold fury from Friday night, but something deeper. Rage at the injustice of it, at the violation, at the fact that one man's cruelty could unravel so much hard work. "Hey!" Ethan turned to find Claire in the doorway, concern etched on her face. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just processing." She came closer, stepping carefully around the broken glass. The adjuster seemed thorough. He was, said I should be able to get most of it covered. That's good, right? It's something. Ethan picked up a piece of the shattered cabinet, cherry wood he'd spent weeks selecting, sanding, finishing, now just kindling. "I had a client picking this up on Thursday, anniversary gift for his wife." Claire's hand found his shoulder. "Can you remake it?" "Not in 3 days." "What if I helped?" Ethan looked at her. "You don't know woodworking." "No, but I can sand, I can measure, I can follow instructions." Claire's grip tightened. "And I can make phone calls to your other clients, explain what happened, ask for extensions. Let me do something useful." The offer settled something in Ethan's chest. He'd been so used to handling everything alone, to being the only one who could fix things, that accepting help felt foreign. But Claire wasn't offering out of pity. She was offering because she understood, because she knew what it meant to have your livelihood threatened. "Okay," he said finally. "Yeah, that would help." Relief crossed Claire's face. "Tell me what you need." They spent the rest of the morning cleaning up the workshop, sweeping glass, sorting salvageable tools from damaged ones, making lists of what needed replacing. Claire worked beside him, quiet and efficient, and Ethan found himself grateful for the company, for the shared labor, for someone who understood that sometimes the best comfort was just showing up. By lunchtime, the workshop looked less like a crime scene and more like a renovation project. Claire had called 2 of Ethan's clients, both of whom were understanding about the delay. The third hadn't answered, but she'd left a detailed voicemail. "You're good at this," Ethan said, handing her a sandwich. "At what? Making phone calls?" "At knowing what needs to be done and doing it. No drama, no hesitation." Claire took a bite, considering. "I spent 2 years working in crisis management before I went freelance. You learn to triage pretty fast." "Why'd you leave?" "Burnout. 18-hour days demanding clients. No life outside of work." She smiled wryly. "Thought freelancing would be better. Turns out I just traded one kind of stress for another." "Any regrets?" "About leaving? No. About how I handled the transition?" Claire set down her sandwich. "Maybe. I should have saved more money, should have had a better plan, but I was so desperate to get out that I just jumped." Ethan understood that impulse, the need to escape something that was slowly killing you, even if the landing was hard. "For what it's worth," he said, "I think you landed pretty well." Claire laughed softly. "I'm living in your guest room because my landlord illegally evicted me. That's not exactly a success story." "You're rebuilding. That takes courage." "So are you. After Sarah." The name still hurt, but less than it used to. Time hadn't healed the wound so much as made it familiar. Ethan could carry it now without it crushing him. "I didn't have a choice," he said. "Mia needed me functional." "You had a choice. You could have fallen apart. A lot of people would have." Claire met his eyes. "But you didn't. You built a business, raised your daughter, kept going. That's not just survival. That's strength." Ethan wanted to deflect, to say he was just doing what any parent would do. But the truth was harder and more complicated. He'd spent 3 years convincing himself that strength meant not needing anyone, that independence was the same as resilience. Meeting Claire had shattered that illusion. "I'm tired of being strong alone," he admitted quietly. Claire reached across the workbench and took his hand. "Good. Because you don't have to be anymore." They sat in the workshop together, holding hands across sawdust and broken wood, and Ethan felt something shift. not just between them, but inside him. Permission to need someone. Permission to let down the walls. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. That afternoon, Ethan got a call from Detective Morris. Richardson had been arraigned. Bail set at $50,000. He couldn't make it, so he'd be sitting in county jail until trial. How long until trial? Ethan asked. 4 to 6 months, probably. DA's building a strong case. With the video evidence and the restraining order violation, they're confident about a conviction. And if he gets convicted? 2 to 5 years, he'll serve most of it. Ethan exhaled slowly. Good. One more thing, Morris continued. The property owner, Richardson's boss, called this morning. Wants to speak with Ms. Morgan. Said something about making things right. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? No idea, but he left his contact information if she wants to reach out. After hanging up, Ethan found Claire in the kitchen, working on her laptop. He relayed the information, watching her expression shift from surprise to suspicion. Why would the property owner want to talk to me? She asked. Only one way to find out. Claire chewed her lip, thinking. What if it's a trap? What if he's trying to get me to drop the complaint? Then you say no and hang up, but Morris wouldn't have passed along the message if he thought it was sketchy. I guess. Claire pulled up her phone. What do I even say? The truth, that you want to know what he wants before you commit to anything. Claire dialed the number Morris had provided, putting it on speaker. It rang 3 times before someone answered. James Hendricks. Mr. Hendricks. This is Claire Morgan. Detective Morris said you wanted to speak with me? Yes, thank you for calling. Hendricks sounded older, his voice gravelly but not unkind. I owe you an apology, Miss Morgan. I had no idea what Richardson was doing until the police contacted me this weekend. Claire shot Ethan a look. What do you mean? I own the property where you were living. Richardson was supposed to be managing it, collecting rent, handling maintenance, basic oversight. Instead, he was pocketing money, falsifying records, and apparently terrorizing tenants. Hendricks sighed heavily. I've terminated his employment and I'm conducting a full audit. Your case isn't the first complaint I've received. I see. Claire's voice was cautious. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve better than what happened, and because I'd like to make amends. Hendricks paused. I'm prepared to offer you the unit back, rent-free for 6 months, with a formal apology and compensation for your troubles. The offer hung in the air. Claire's eyes went wide, then narrow with suspicion. What's the catch? She asked. No catch, just a property owner trying to do the right thing. And the tenant board complaint? I'm not asking you to drop it. Richardson deserves whatever consequences come his way. But I'd like to work with you directly to resolve the damage he caused. Claire looked at Ethan, uncertainty written across her face. He gave a small nod. Your call. Can I think about it? Claire asked. Of course, take all the time you need. I'll email you the formal offer in writing. Hendricks gave her his direct number. Again, I'm truly sorry for what you went through. It never should have happened. After they hung up, Claire sat staring at her phone like it might explode. That was unexpected, she said finally. Sounds legitimate to me. 6 months rent-free. That's thousands of dollars. It's what you're owed. More, honestly. Claire set down the phone, expression conflicted. I should take it, right? It's a good offer. Fair. Yeah, it is. So why do I feel sick about it? Ethan sat down beside her. Because taking it means leaving here. Claire's breath caught. I can't stay in your guest room forever, Ethan. Why not? Because it's not my home. Because you and Mia need your space. Because... She stopped, searching for words. Because the longer I stay, the harder it'll be to leave. Then don't leave. The words came out simple, honest, no calculation behind them, just truth. Claire stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want you to go. Not to the rental unit. Not anywhere. Ethan took her hand. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. I know this is fast and probably crazy, but I haven't felt this alive in 3 years, and I'm not ready to go back to just surviving. Ethan, you don't have to answer now, but before you accept Hendricks' offer, just think about what you actually want, not what's practical or safe, what you want. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what I want. Yes, you do. You're just scared to say it. For a long moment, they sat in silence. Then Claire pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. I need to think, she said. Okay. Alone. Ethan nodded, watching her disappear into the guest room. He'd pushed too hard, asked for too much. But the words were out now, and he couldn't take them back. Didn't want to take them back, because he'd meant every single one. Dad. Mia noticed something was wrong at dinner. Claire was quiet, pushing food around her plate. Ethan made conversation about the school day, but his heart wasn't in it. The tension hummed beneath everything, unspoken but obvious. Are you guys fighting? Mia asked suddenly. Both adults looked at her in surprise. No, Bug, Ethan said. Why would you think that? Because you're both being weird, like when Emma's parents fight and they get all quiet and don't look at each other. Out of the mouths of babes. Ethan met Claire's eyes across the table. We're not fighting, Claire said gently. Just thinking about some grown-up stuff. What kind of stuff? Boring stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Mia didn't look convinced, but she went back to her dinner. After a few minutes, she spoke again, voice small. Are you leaving, Claire? The question hit like a physical blow. Claire's fork clattered against her plate. What makes you think that? She asked carefully. Because people always leave eventually. Mia's voice was matter-of-fact, the kind of brutal honesty only children could deliver. Mommy left, and Mrs. Patterson moved away, and my friend Jessica's dad left for a new job. Everyone leaves. Ethan's throat tightened. He'd tried so hard to protect Mia from the reality of loss, to make her world stable and predictable. But she'd learned anyway, 7 years old and already bracing for abandonment. Claire got up from her chair and knelt beside Mia. Sometimes people have to leave, she said softly, but not because they want to, and not because of anything you did. But you're thinking about leaving, right? That's the grown-up stuff? Claire glanced at Ethan, then back at Mia. I'm thinking about what comes next, but I promise, whatever I decide, I'll talk to you about it first, okay? Mia studied her face, then nodded slowly. Okay. She went back to eating, crisis apparently averted. But Ethan saw the question in her eyes, the fear she was too young to articulate. Please don't leave. Please stay. He felt the same way. After dinner, after Mia was in bed, Ethan found Claire on the back porch. She was wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. She's scared, Claire said without looking at him. Yeah. I don't want to hurt her. I know. But I also don't want to make promises I can't keep. Ethan sat down beside her. What are you afraid of? Claire pulled the blanket tighter. That this is just proximity. That we're both lonely and scared, and we've convinced ourselves it's something more than it is. Is that what you think? I don't know what I think. I just know that every time I've trusted someone, every time I've let myself believe in something good, it's blown up in my face. So you'd rather walk away before it has the chance? Maybe. At least then I'd be in control of the pain. Ethan understood that logic. He'd lived it for 3 years. But he also knew where it led. Nowhere. Just an endless loop of safety and numbness. I can't promise you this won't hurt, he said quietly. I can't promise we'll work out perfectly, but I can promise I'll show up every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Claire turned to look at him. Why? Because you're worth showing up for. And because I think we could build something real here. Something that matters. Or we could crash and burn. Yeah, we could, but at least we'd know we tried. Claire stared at him for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes. Fear giving way to possibility, caution giving way to hope. I'm terrified, she whispered. Good. That means it matters. She leaned her head on his shoulder and Ethan wrapped his arm around her. They sat like that for a long time, watching the stars, neither of them ready to make promises, but both of them unwilling to let go. The next morning, Claire called James Hendricks. I appreciate your offer, she said, Ethan listening from across the kitchen table. But I need to think about it. Can I have a few days? Of course. Take all the time you need. After she hung up, Ethan raised an eyebrow. Buying time? Buying clarity. Claire poured herself more coffee. I need to figure out what I actually want, not just what makes sense on paper. Fair enough. She sat down across from him, hands wrapped around her mug. Can I ask you something? Always. If I stay, and I'm not saying I am, but if I did, what would that look like? Logistically? Ethan considered the question. They'd been dancing around this for days, avoiding the practical details because emotions felt safer than logistics. You'd have your own space, he said finally. The guest room, or we could convert the office. You'd pay rent, a fair amount, not the insulting rate I offered before. We'd split household expenses. You'd have your own life, your own work, your own independence. And the relationship part? We take it slow, keep it separate from Mia until we're both sure. No pressure, no expectations beyond showing up and being honest. Claire nodded slowly. And if it doesn't work out, then we figure out next steps like adults. But we don't let it blow up everything. We don't let it hurt Mia. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's doable. If we both want it. Claire stared into her coffee. I've never been good at wanting things, at admitting what I need. Neither have I, but maybe that's something we can learn together. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Claire looked up, eyes clear and certain. I want to try, she said. I'm scared out of my mind, but I want to try. Relief flooded through Ethan so fast it almost knocked him over. Yeah? Yeah. A small smile. But we're doing this right. Real rent, real boundaries, real conversations about what we both need. Agreed. And if Mia seems uncomfortable at any point, we adjust. Her well-being comes first, always. Claire reached across the table, taking his hand. Okay, then let's do this. Ethan squeezed her hand, something warm and hopeful expanding in his chest. This was reckless. This was fast. This went against every careful rule he'd built. And it felt absolutely right. They told Mia that evening after dinner, sat her down at the kitchen table with hot chocolate and honest words. Claire's going to stay with us for a while longer, Ethan said, and we want to make sure you're okay with that. Mia looked between them. How much longer? We're not sure yet, Claire answered, but more than just a few weeks. Is that okay with you? Mia took a sip of cocoa, thinking hard. Will you still help me with homework? Of course. And make pancakes on Saturday? Claire smiled. If you want me to. And play games with me? Absolutely. Mia nodded, satisfied. Then I think it's good. I like having you here. The house is less quiet. Ethan's throat tightened. He'd thought he was doing fine, keeping things together for Mia, but she'd felt the emptiness too. The silence. The weight of grief neither of them talked about. Is there anything else you want to know? He asked gently. Mia looked at Claire, then at her dad. Are you guys dating? The question hung in the air, blunt and innocent. Ethan glanced at Claire, who gave a small nod. We're getting to know each other better, he said carefully, like grown-ups do when they like each other. But we're taking it slow and nothing changes how much I love you. You're still my priority. Always. Mia processed this with the seriousness of someone much older. Okay, but you have to tell me if anything big changes. Deal. And Claire? Yes? Mia's voice was small. You're not going to leave like Mommy did, right? The question shattered something in the room. Claire's eyes filled immediately. Oh, sweetie. She knelt beside Mia's chair. Your mom didn't want to leave. She got sick. And sometimes when people get very sick, they can't stay no matter how much they want to. I know. But other people can choose to leave. Yes, they can, and I can't promise I'll never make mistakes or that everything will always be perfect. But I can promise that if I ever need to make a big decision about staying or going, I'll talk to you and your dad about it first. No surprises, no just disappearing, okay? Mia searched Claire's face, looking for lies. Finding none. Okay? She said finally. Claire hugged her, and Ethan watched his daughter hold on to this woman who'd stumbled into their lives just weeks ago. Watched Mia trust again, despite all the reasons she had not to. If a 7-year-old could be brave enough to hope, so could he. Over the next week, they settled into a new rhythm. Claire moved some of her belongings from the garage into the guest room, making it feel less temporary. She started contributing to grocery shopping, to household chores, to the invisible labor of running a home. Ethan taught her basic woodworking skills in the evenings after Mia was asleep, and she proved surprisingly capable with a sander. They were careful around Mia, no overt affection, no confusing signals. But in the quiet moments, late at night when they were alone, they let themselves be more. Sitting close on the couch, holding hands, stolen kisses in the kitchen that felt both ordinary and precious. On Thursday, the tenant board called. They'd completed their investigation into Richardson and ruled in Claire's favor. The property owner, Hendricks, was being fined for negligent oversight. Richardson would face additional civil penalties once he got out of jail. "It's done," Claire said after hanging up. "Officially done." Ethan pulled her into a hug. "How does it feel?" "Like I can finally breathe." That weekend they celebrated with a family dinner, Claire's idea. She cooked a proper meal, complete with a dessert Mia helped make. They ate together at the table, talking and laughing, and for the first time in 3 years, Ethan's house felt like more than just a place where he and Mia existed. It felt like home. After Mia went to bed, Claire and Ethan cleaned up the kitchen together in comfortable silence. "I turned down Hendricks' offer," Claire said suddenly. Ethan paused mid-dish. "You did?" "Called him this morning, told him I appreciated it, but I had other plans." "And he was okay with that?" "He was understanding, even wished me luck." Claire dried her hands on a towel, turning to face Ethan. "I know we said we'd take things slow, keep it practical, but staying in that rental unit felt like hedging my bets, like keeping one foot out the door. And now? Now I'm all in, both feet, both terrified but committed." Ethan closed the distance between them, cupping her face in both hands. "You're sure?" "No, but I'm choosing it anyway." He kissed her then, deep and certain, and Claire kissed him back like she was sealing a promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "We're really doing this," he said. "Yeah, we really are." Outside, rain started to fall, soft and steady, nothing like the storm that had brought them together. But standing in his kitchen with Claire in his arms, Ethan thought maybe this was better. Not dramatic or desperate, just real, just right, just worth fighting for. 3 months passed like water finding its level. Not rushing, not stagnant, just flowing into the shape it was meant to take. The workshop was fully repaired by midwinter, insurance money covering the damage and then some. Ethan used the surplus to upgrade his equipment, and Claire helped him redesign the layout for better efficiency. She had an eye for organization that transformed his functional chaos into something that actually made sense. "You're wasting movement," she'd said one Saturday morning, standing in the middle of the shop with her hands on her hips. "Your saw is on one side, your sanding station on the other. You're walking back and forth 50 times a day." "I've always done it this way." "That doesn't mean it's the best way." She'd been right. The new layout cut his production time by nearly a third. Ethan found himself taking on more orders, building the kind of custom pieces he'd always wanted to make, but never had the bandwidth for. Claire's freelance work picked up too. Word of mouth from satisfied clients led to bigger contracts, steadier income. She converted the office into a proper workspace, complete with a desk Ethan built for her, cherry wood with hidden cable management, and a drawer designed specifically for her laptop. "It's perfect," she'd said when he presented it, running her hands over the smooth finish. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to." She'd kissed him then, soft and grateful, and Ethan had thought about how different this was from his marriage to Sarah. Not better or worse, just different. With Sarah, everything had been passionate intensity, love that burned bright and fast. With Claire, it was steadier, deeper, built on choice rather than just chemistry. Both were real, both mattered. Mia adjusted to the new normal with the adaptability of childhood. She stopped referring to Claire as Dad's friend and started just using her name naturally. When Claire picked her up from school or helped with homework, it didn't feel like an intrusion anymore. It felt like family. But there were hard moments too. Days when Mia would suddenly ask questions about Sarah, what she looked like, what she sounded like, whether she would have liked Claire. Ethan answered as honestly as he could, never trying to replace the past but making room for the present. One night in late February, Mia came downstairs an hour after bedtime, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Can't sleep, bug?" Ethan asked from the couch where he and Claire were watching a movie. Mia shook her head, eyes red. "Bad dream?" "No, just thinking." Claire paused the movie. "Want to talk about it?" Mia climbed onto the couch between them, small and vulnerable in her pajamas. "I forgot what Mommy's voice sounded like." The admission hit Ethan in the chest. He'd been so focused on moving forward that he hadn't thought about what Mia might be losing in the process. "That's okay, sweetheart," he said gently. "It's been a long time." "But I don't want to forget her." "You won't. We have pictures and videos, and I'll always tell you stories about her." "But it's not the same as remembering myself," Claire spoke quietly. "Your mom will always be part of who you are, Mia. Even if you can't remember her voice, you have pieces of her, the way you laugh, the way you care about people. Those things don't disappear." Mia looked up at her. "Do you think she'd be mad that you're here?" "Oh, honey," Claire's eyes glistened. "I think your mom would want your dad and you to be happy. And I really hope, that me being here adds to that happiness, not takes away from it." "It does," Mia said simply. "Add to it, I mean. I like you being here." "I like being here too." Mia leaned against Claire's shoulder and Ethan watched the two of them together, his daughter and the woman who'd become so much more than a temporary house guest. They sat like that for a while, the movie forgotten, just being together in the quiet. Later, after Mia was back in bed, Claire turned to Ethan with worry in her eyes. "Was that okay? What I said?" "It was perfect. I don't want to overstep. She's your daughter and Sarah's daughter, and you're not just anything." Ethan pulled her close. "You're part of this family now. Mia knows it. I know it. The question is, do you know it?" Claire was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I still feel like I'm visiting. Like one day you'll both wake up and realize I don't actually belong here. That's not going to happen. You don't know that." "Yeah, I do, because belonging isn't about how long you've been somewhere. It's about showing up. And you show up, Claire, every single day." She pressed her face against his shoulder, and Ethan felt her breathe out something that might have been fear or relief or both. "I love you," she whispered. The words landed softly, tentatively, like she was testing their weight. Ethan pulled back to look at her face. "Say that again." "I love you. Stronger this time. More certain." "I've been trying not to, trying to keep some distance, but I can't. I love you. And I love Mia. And I love this life we're building, even though it scares me." Ethan cupped her face in his hands. "I love you too." "Yeah?" "Yeah." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her mouth. "I think I have for a while. I was just too scared to say it." Claire's laugh was shaky. "What are we so afraid of?" "Losing this. Losing each other." "Then let's not lose it." "Deal." They held each other on the couch, and outside the winter wind rattled the windows, but inside everything felt warm and safe and right. Spring arrived with sudden force, trees exploding into green overnight. Ethan's business was thriving, Claire's client list was full, and Mia finished second grade with straight A's and a science fair ribbon. But there was still one piece of unfinished business. Richardson's trial was scheduled for early April. The DA had built a strong case: criminal trespass, vandalism, harassment, violating a restraining order. With Ethan's video evidence and Claire's documented complaints, conviction seemed certain. Still, the thought of seeing Richardson again, of sitting in a courtroom and reliving that night, made Claire's hands shake. "You don't have to testify," Ethan reminded her the week before the trial. "The video evidence is strong enough." "No, I want to." Claire's jaw was set, determined. "He tried to destroy my life. He tried to destroy your business. I want him to hear what that did to us." "Okay, then I'll be right there with you." The trial lasted 3 days. Claire took the stand on day 2, walking the jury through Richardson's harassment, the illegal eviction, the threatening messages. Her voice stayed steady even when the defense attorney tried to rattle her, suggesting she'd been behind on rent, that she'd antagonized Richardson, that the eviction was justified. "I was 3 days late with one payment," Claire said firmly. "I immediately contacted Mr. Richardson to arrange payment. He refused. Instead, he changed my locks and dumped my belongings in the rain. That's not legal eviction procedure in any circumstance. The defense attorney tried again. But you filed a complaint against him shortly after, correct? Some might say that was retaliatory. Some might say dumping a woman's belongings outside in the middle of the night without notice is retaliatory, Claire shot back. I filed a complaint because what he did was illegal, and then he threatened me and the man who gave me shelter. That's not retaliation, that's self-defense. The jury ate it up. Several nodded in agreement. Ethan testified on day 3. Walking through the night, Richardson broke into his workshop. The video evidence played on screens throughout the courtroom. Richardson's face clearly visible, crowbar in hand, destroying property while shouting threats. The defense had nothing to counter it. No way to spin destruction caught on camera. Closing arguments happened that afternoon. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Richardson would serve 4 years minimum. Restitution payments to both Claire and Ethan. Permanent record as a convicted felon. When the verdict was read, Claire's whole body sagged with relief. Ethan took her hand and she squeezed back so hard his fingers went numb. Outside the courthouse, Detective Morris shook their hands. Justice served, he said. Doesn't always work out this clean. Thank you for everything, Claire said. You two did the heavy lifting. I just filed the paperwork. Morris tipped his head. Take care of each other. They walked to the truck in silence, both processing. When they got inside, Claire turned to Ethan. It's really over. Yeah, it really is. I don't know what to do with that. What do you want to do? Claire thought for a moment, then smiled. I want to go home. Home, not your house or the rental. Home. Ethan started the truck and drove. That weekend, they celebrated with a quiet dinner at home. Mia made place cards and insisted on wearing her fancy dress. Claire cooked something elaborate and delicious. Ethan opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving for a special occasion. What are we toasting? Mia asked, holding up her juice box. New beginnings, Claire said, and happy endings, Ethan added. They clinked glasses and juice boxes, and Mia grinned so wide her whole face scrunched up. After dinner, after Mia was in bed, Ethan found Claire on the back porch again. Their spot, where they'd had so many hard conversations, made so many difficult decisions. Beautiful night, she said as he sat beside her. Yeah. I was thinking. About? Claire turned to face him, nervous energy radiating off her. About what comes next. Okay. I turned down Hendrik's offer months ago. I've been paying you rent, living in the guest room, keeping everything separate and temporary, even though we both know it's not anymore. Ethan's heart started beating faster. True. And I realized I don't want temporary. I don't want to keep one foot out the door, ready to run if things get hard. Claire took a breath. I want permanent. I want real. I want us. You have us. No, I want... She pulled out a piece of paper from her pocket, unfolding it carefully. I want this. Ethan took the paper. It was a lease agreement. For the whole house, both their names. Equal. Claire, I know it's just paperwork. I know we're already doing this, but I need it to feel official. I need to know I'm not just staying until something better comes along. I'm staying because this is where I belong. Ethan stared at the lease, throat tight with emotion. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. For me. Claire's voice wavered. I've spent my whole life being afraid of commitment, afraid of getting hurt. But you and Mia, you're worth the risk. You're worth everything. Ethan set down the lease and pulled her into his arms. I love you. I love you too. So we're doing this? Making it official? If you want to. I want to. Ethan pulled back to see her face. But I want more than just a lease. Claire's breath caught. What do you mean? Ethan hadn't planned this, hadn't bought a ring or prepared a speech, but standing on his back porch with this woman who'd crashed into his life and turned everything upside down in the best possible way, the words came easily. Eventually, not today, not tomorrow, but eventually, I want to marry you. I want Mia to be your daughter too, if that's something you want. I want to build a life that's bigger than just survival. I want all of it, with you. Tears streamed down Claire's face. Are you proposing? Not yet. I'm telling you my intentions. So you know what you're signing up for. Claire laughed through her tears. You're insane. Probably. We've only known each other 6 months. I know. This is reckless and impulsive and totally unlike you. I know that too. Claire grabbed his shirt and pulled him into a kiss that tasted like salt and joy and promise. When they finally broke apart, she pressed her forehead to his. Ask me again in 6 months, she whispered. Ask me properly. And I'll say yes. Ethan's heart felt like it might burst. Yeah? Yeah. Because you're right. This is worth everything. They held each other under the stars, and Ethan thought about the night 6 months ago when he'd stood in the rain and made an offer he'd meant as a joke. How that single impulsive moment had changed everything. Life was strange like that. You spent years building walls, convinced safety meant isolation. And then someone came along and showed you that the scariest thing, letting someone in, could also be the most worthwhile. Well, 6 months later, on a crisp October morning, Ethan woke early and made coffee for 2. Claire was still asleep in their room, not the guest room anymore, but the master bedroom they'd started sharing in late spring. Mia was at a sleepover, giving them a rare, quiet morning. Ethan carried the coffee upstairs, setting it on Claire's nightstand. She stirred, opening one eye. What time is it? Early, but I couldn't sleep. Why not? Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly nervous. Because I have something to ask you. Claire sat up, instantly awake. Ethan. He pulled out a small box from his pocket. Nothing fancy. Simple gold band with a single stone. Classic. Timeless. 6 months ago, I told you my intentions, he said. Told you I wanted to marry you, build a life with you, make this permanent. And you told me to ask again properly. Claire's hands flew to her mouth, eyes already glistening. So I'm asking. Ethan opened the box. Claire Morgan, will you marry me? Will you be my partner, Mia's mom, the person I choose every single day for the rest of my life? For a moment, Claire couldn't speak, just stared at him with tears streaming down her face. Then she launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck. Yes, she said against his shoulder. Yes, yes, absolutely, yes. Ethan slid the ring onto her finger. A perfect fit. Claire held up her hand, watching it catch the morning light. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. She kissed him then, soft and certain and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both grinning like idiots, Claire laughed. We should probably tell Mia. Already planned. I'm picking her up in an hour. Thought we could take her to breakfast, tell her together. You've thought of everything. I try. They lay back against the pillows, Claire's head on his chest, the ring on her finger catching light. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up, dogs barking, cars starting, ordinary life continuing around them. But inside Ethan's house, their house now, everything felt extraordinary. I never thought I'd get this again, Ethan said quietly. After Sarah, I convinced myself this kind of happiness was a one-time thing. And now? Now I know that love doesn't run out, it just changes shape. Claire pressed a kiss to his chest. I'm glad you invited me in that night. So am I. Even though it was supposed to be a joke? Ethan smiled. Best joke I ever told. Thought. They picked up Mia at 10, both of them buzzing with barely contained excitement. Mia climbed into the back seat, chattering about the sleepover, and didn't notice Claire's ring until they were seated at the diner. Claire, what's that on your finger? She asked, reaching for Claire's hand. Claire glanced at Ethan, who nodded. It's an engagement ring, Claire said gently. Your dad asked me to marry him this morning. Mia's eyes went wide. You said yes? I did. For a heartbeat, Mia didn't react, just looked between them, processing. Then she launched herself across the booth, hugging Claire tight. Does that mean you're staying forever? She asked, voice muffled against Claire's shoulder. Yeah, sweetheart, forever. And you'll be like my mom? Claire pulled back to see Mia's face, tears threatening. If that's okay with you, I'll never replace your mom. She'll always be your mom. But I'd be honored to be your mom too. Mia nodded seriously. I'd like that. Ethan's throat closed up watching them. His daughter and his fiancée. his family, complete in a way he'd stopped believing was possible. They ordered pancakes and hot chocolate and talked about wedding plans. Nothing big, just family and close friends, maybe in the backyard. Mia wanted to wear a fancy dress and carry flowers. Claire wanted Ethan to build an arbor for the ceremony. Ethan just wanted the day to arrive. Leaving the diner, Mia grabbed both their hands, swinging between them. "This is the best day ever," she announced. Claire squeezed Ethan's hand across Mia's head and he squeezed back. "Yeah," he agreed. "It really is." Dogcon. The wedding happened on a Saturday in late November, surrounded by falling leaves and crisp autumn air. They set up chairs in the backyard, hung lights from the trees, and Ethan's arbor, built from reclaimed wood, stood at the end of a simple aisle. Mia walked down first in her chosen fancy dress, scattering rose petals with intense concentration. Then Claire appeared, wearing a simple cream dress, carrying wildflowers Mia had helped pick. She was breathtaking. Ethan stood at the arbor, Mia beside him as his best woman, and watched the woman he loved walk toward him. No hesitation, no doubt, just certainty. The ceremony was short and sweet. They'd written their own vows, Claire promising to show up, to stay, to love both Ethan and Mia through whatever came next. Ethan promising protection, partnership, and a home that would always be theirs. When they kissed, sealing vows and promises, Mia cheered so loud half the guests laughed. The reception was casual, barbecue and beer, cake made by Mrs. Chen, dancing in the backyard as the sun set. Claire's few remaining family members mixed with Ethan's friends and neighbors. Lisa Chen gave a toast about justice and new beginnings. Detective Morris showed up with his wife and congratulated them both. It was perfect in its imperfection, not fancy or elaborate, just real. As the evening wound down and guests started leaving, Ethan found Claire sitting on the back porch steps, still in her wedding dress, watching the last of the sunset. "Hey, Mrs. Cole," he said, sitting beside her. She smiled. "That's going to take some getting used to." "Good getting used to, or bad?" "The best kind." Claire leaned her head on his shoulder. "I keep thinking about that night in the rain, how terrified I was, how lost. And now? Now I'm found." Ethan wrapped his arm around her. "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared. Inside they could hear Mia laughing with Mrs. Chen, their daughter, their family, their life. "Do you believe in fate?" Claire asked suddenly. Ethan considered. "I believe in choice. I believe you and I chose to take a risk, chose to show up, chose to build something real. Fate might have brought you to my driveway that night, but everything after was us. I like that better anyway. Gives us credit for the hard work." "Exactly." Claire turned to look at him, eyes bright even in the fading light. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. For not giving up. For inviting a stranger into your home and your heart." She kissed him softly. "For making terrible jokes in the rain." Ethan laughed. "Best terrible joke I ever made. Second best, the best one is yet to come." "Oh yeah, what's that?" Claire grinned. "When we tell Mia she's going to be a big sister." Ethan froze. "What?" "Surprise." Claire's hand moved to her stomach. "Found out this week. I was going to wait until after the wedding to tell you, but I can't keep secrets from you." Ethan stared at her, processing. A baby. They were having a baby. "Are you happy?" Claire asked, suddenly uncertain. "Happy?" Ethan pulled her into his arms, laughing. "I'm terrified and thrilled and completely overwhelmed. So yeah, I'm happy." Claire melted against him. "Me too." They held each other on the porch steps, and Ethan thought about the journey that brought them here. The rain and the fear and the risks, the legal battles and late-night conversations, the slow building of trust, and the leap into love. All of it leading to this moment, this life, this family. Inside, Mia called for them. "Dad, Claire, come see what Mrs. Chen brought." "Coming, Bug," Ethan called back. He stood, offering Claire his hand. She took it, rising gracefully despite the wedding dress and the early pregnancy and the magnitude of everything they'd built together. "Ready?" he asked. Claire smiled. "For what?" "Everything. The baby, the future, all of it. She squeezed his hand. With you? Always. They walked inside together, leaving the porch behind. The rain that had brought them together was long gone, replaced by clear skies and new beginnings. And in the house that had once been too quiet, too empty, too full of grief, there was now laughter and love and the promise of more. Not temporary anymore, not survival, just life. Full and messy and absolutely worth fighting for. Home.